Hello, my name is Paul Gilbert, and I'm president of the Compassionate Mind Foundation. In liaison with the University of Derby, we run a BPS recognized diploma in compassion-focused therapy. We've just had a major meta-analysis study that shows that compassion-focused therapy is a highly effective therapy for a range of different psychological difficulties. And today, I'm delighted to welcome Lorraine Beeston, who 22 to 23 did our diploma, is one of our star therapists, and is here to talk about her experiences of the year doing compassion-focused therapy. So Lorraine, welcome, and thank you for coming to talk to us about your experiences. So what led up to your decision to apply to do the diploma?
Okay, so well, thank you for having me here. It's an absolute honour. And I had followed you and read lots of your books over the years, listened to your books on Audible for many, many years, way back when I was training as an integrative psychotherapist back in 2008, 2009. So it was something that I was always passionate about. And when I was at Birmingham Uni doing a low intensity course, postgrad certificate, and then I went on to do a postgrad diploma, they talked a lot about compassion focused therapy. And I was like, I really want to do that. I really want to get a qualification in that. But at the time, working full time for the NHS and being able to come and do it with yourself in Derby was really difficult. So when the diploma became available, which my colleague and friend told me about because she was on the diploma as well, and she found out about it before you'd even advertised it on the Compassionate Mind Foundation website. I was like, really, really, really? So that was what led up to it. It was many, many years of wanting to do the qualification, but being unable to. So the diploma enabled me to do that alongside working, and I was really fortunate in my trust being allowing me to do that at the time.
So that's, as you say, long period of time of actually getting familiar with CFT and then coming on the course. So what was it like when you came onto the course? I think you started in 2022,
Yeah.
and then for the next year, you studied CFT. What was that like?
Um, it was absolutely incredible, wonderful experience. And I think really I've got to be honest to start with, because I'd done quite a few of the shorter courses and I'd done the 3-day advanced.
Yeah.
In the past, I've done courses like that, and then you go on to do a diploma, and it's very much the same, what you've already covered, just in a tiny bit more depth, and you just get the rubber stamp of the diploma. So there's me thinking that that's what it was going to be, but it was just unbelievably rich with information that even though I'd studied for so many years and read, there was so much more that I learned from the diploma that I would never have imagined. You know, it was like a Pandora's box of new information that could be slightly overwhelming to start with, but then when you get to grips with it, if it's not overwhelming to start with, then you're not really learning anything, are you? So it was yeah, there was a lot of information. So I was like, well, silly me thinking that I was just going to get an expanded version of the 3 days. And a lot of people said the same. They were like, wow, you know, there's a lot then. And obviously this book is wonderful, but it's got lots and lots of pages in it, you know, and it's quite small print as well. So you're just like, wow, is my brain ever going to take all that in? But you helped that along, and so do the international trainers, who were amazing as well.
Yes, and you did terrific, didn't you? And you had regular supervisions, which I think is very important. So how was that for you, having those regular supervisions in a group of four?
Yeah, it was lovely to have that and to be able to talk about um sometimes our fears as well, fears, blocks and resistances to the learning and going out and trying it, thinking that beforehand we were very skilled already in CFT, and then realizing, hold on a minute, you know, at the time, because I'm a trauma focused CBT therapist in the NHS, usually I always brought CFT into it majorly, but it felt like, to start with, that I'd got my foot in two boats and my legs were going like this. So the supervision really helped to kind of bring that back, because obviously you're using two modalities, because you're using pure CFT while you're doing the diploma. And then obviously when you become more familiar with it and you've done it for a while, you can integrate it really well. But obviously you still, most people I'm doing pure CFT with, and you're kind of doing a maybe cognitive interweave, or the other way around, you're doing CBT with compassionate interweave. So it just felt like that a bit. So the supervision really helped to bring that together, and realizing that peers were feeling the same too. But if you're not feeling like that, then you're not learning. So I found it really rewarding and wonderful, because I've been on many courses in the past and thought, well, that was just a bit of a repeat of what I already knew, really. And you might switch off halfway through. So it was challenging in a wonderful way.
So you've made some extremely important points there, Lorraine. Firstly, that we tried to be a science, so we cover quite a lot of basic psychological science. And as you say, there's a lot to learn, and you studied very hard, and the importance of the supervision. But the other point that you're making is, we call it compassion-focused therapy, because you're learning how to use CBT techniques, attachment theory techniques, some psychodynamic techniques, and so on, but orientate it through compassion motivation. So the point that you're making is really important, that you interweave some of the other techniques from different therapies, because there's a lot of wisdoms out there, a lot of wisdoms in other therapies, but you keep this compassion focus, because that is what creates the brain state for change. So is there anything else that you would like the trainees, potential trainees, people following your footsteps, is there anything else you would like them to know?
Be prepared to go on a personal journey, a wonderful personal journey of growth and learning, because not just about being a therapist or a clinician, it's about this personal relationship with compassion, or self-compassion and compassion-focused therapy. And you might uncover some stones that you didn't even realize were there, and that's very cathartic and very beneficial. So that's something that I would say would be really important for them to know. And also the upside down classroom that we did was amazing. Found that really, really amazing, to go away and read something first, not really totally understand it, be a bit overwhelmed by it, and then write 500 words reflective piece of work on that, and then to share that with a study group and get their feedback as well. We learned so much, because we'd all noticed different things from having read it, and we saw each other's perspective, and then we'd come into the bigger classroom and find even more. So I would say really engage with that, because a lot of people found that hard, because they didn't realize they were going to have to do that as well, because obviously people are working as well. But if you can, that's really, really important, I would say, doing that reflective practice. I think it's a brilliant idea to, not reflective practice, the reflection on what you've read. Really important to do that, to study first, because sometimes you can go in, you can listen to a lecture, and then come away and time passes by and you didn't read the bit that you should have done, and it's not really been absorbed in the same way. So
Yeah, I think it's another wonderful point you make, Lorraine. And also, of course, you were engaging in a number of personal practices, because it's important that therapists practice what they preach, so to speak. And you were saying about how much it's helped with things like self-criticism and so forth, because self-criticism is one of the big things we go after in CFT. So can you say a little bit more about that? I mean, what was your experience of using CFT to help with self-criticism?
yeah, so I think a lot of people will say that they do have that imposter syndrome sometimes,
Yeah.
and I think even though I'd already done a lot of work on myself over the years, having trained in many different modalities of therapy, and having to receive personal therapy in those modalities as part of the course, I thought, I've done a lot of work on myself, I'm okay. And then discovered that there was a lot of things that still needed work, and the inner critic was still very, very loud, and it was very emotional sometimes when maybe you were doing role play or you were doing it with the group, and very tearful, but in a good way. So I've discovered a lot about myself and grown quite a lot as well. So I can find the strength and courage to be less submissive now, that I didn't think I was, but I realized, my the evolution of my brain was that I needed to be a good girl and never show my emotions to anyone, always please everyone, always don't talk about anything that might upset anybody, and so on and so forth. And then since doing the diploma, I now very calmly and wisely and courageously speak my mind. And if it falls on deaf ears, then so be it. But sometimes it can upset people because they think, well, that's far from compassionate. I don't like this new version of you anymore. But yes, it is. It's compassionate to ourselves. So maybe be prepared to have different relationships with people at the end of the diploma or during.
Yeah, I mean, I think you put that so brilliantly well. That's very clear, isn't it? And because the thing is, with compassion, we talk a lot about courage and wisdom of compassion. And at the root of compassion is quite a lot of assertiveness. And, it's not about just being kind and nice and submissive or any of those things. They're important. Being kind is obviously very important. We certainly promote that. But at the root is this courage and wisdom to be able to pursue suffering and not to cause it to yourself or others. And assertiveness is a key skill. And I thought you articulated that brilliantly well, of saying how you can learn to become more assertive by working with your critical process, working with background issues. And the course allows you to do that.
Thank you. Thank you. And so also noticing more, even though I'm a mindfulness teacher, I teach on an app and so on and so forth. I've taught mindfulness for a long time and meditation. So I'm really connected with my thoughts and feelings. But then to actually have done the diploma now, I'm so much more connected with when I'm in my threat mode rather than trying to immediately soothe. I'm noticing and going with it and saying, okay, so what's happening with you now? What's going on for you now? Almost like an internal self-therapy. And then sitting in that threat mode, not wanting to run away, sit with it, and then bring the soothe in and look at how much, where is the drive and the compassionate intention moving forwards, and what can you do? Maybe even say, yeah, this is really hard. This is really hard. And it's okay for you to feel this way. So now, what do you need? Yeah, so
Yeah.
that is more clear now to me.
Yeah, so that again is there's a great point you make that, as you say, you've been a mindfulness teacher. So mindfulness is again very important in CFT and how you use mindfulness in a compassionate way. And you put that very clearly. And since the diploma, Lorraine, I understand you've also been doing presentations. You've had the courage to do presentations and to quite large numbers, actually.
Yes, well, initially I did a presentation to the team that I used to work for on staff wellbeing, and that was online, and that went down really well. But then, unfortunately, I left. So we then had an opportunity to do a presentation for at a conference for it was about 400 people, 350, 400 people.
Wow, 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 wow.
Absolutely petrified because it was actually on a massive big stage. So it was myself and my two colleagues who were also on the diploma, so clinical lead and myself and another therapist as well. And I was so nervous, so nervous. And I felt like I couldn't breathe, and I was doing my soothing and everything. I was doing my compassionate mind training. And then I actually had my compassionate other standing next to me, who is a monk, who was a monk. It can change sometimes, but this time it was a monk standing next to me. And also, I did drama back at school. I did A-level drama, and I like bringing a bit of comedy into things. And we hadn't planned this. And I'd said to the others before we went on, I said, do you mind if I bring a bit of a comedic value to it? And they were like, Catherine said, yes, yeah, do what you want. And then my other colleague, Claire, who is also a friend, has known me for a long time, said, you might regret that. So, but what I did was I did an impression of the inner critic on the stage throughout, and everybody was in uproar. It was brilliant how everybody laughed. And I said, we all introduced ourselves, and I said, there is somebody else on the stage here with me, standing next to me that you perhaps can't see. And I got the microphone and I went, it's the inner critic, like that. And they were all laughing. And then throughout, I kept bringing this voice in. And everybody came to me afterwards, said that was brilliant. So the comedic element of the inner critic was quite powerful as well. And so that what we did in the presentation was really powerful as well. It was brilliant. You know, we had a continuum, and on one end was how much does your work impact your well-being, and it was a great deal and not at all, or a huge amount and not at all. And Catherine walked along the stage and people had to sit down at the point they thought they would be on the continuum. And then we did another question on how much time do you spend on your own well-being, with self-compassion. And we did the same continuum again, you know, a huge amount and not at all, walking the other way around. And people would sit down. So myself and Claire would stand where the first one was and where the second one was, and you could see there was a big gap. And so I did a compassionate mind training, in depth, you know, soothing breathing, and with the whole group. So I went into serious mode as well, which is a bit of a big switch from the comedian. And they went away with a compassionate intention. So that would never have happened if the three of us hadn't been on the diploma. And it was just wonderful.
That sounds wonderful. Yes. And I think the point you make is that we use a lot of playfulness on the diploma. Playfulness creates a brain state which allows you to listen, to be open, and to change. One other thing, Lorraine, as I understand that since doing the diploma, you've actually changed your career somewhat, and the diploma gave you the courage to do that. Could you say a little bit about what happened?
Yeah, so I was very happy in my role as a high intensity CBT therapist. And I did the diploma, and I'd always, like I said, woven CFT into my practice. But then because of the NICE guidelines and the IAPT hand manual, I wasn't allowed to use predominantly CFT or pure CFT. Not that I would use pure CFT, but, you know, just I wasn't allowed to use it. And I was like, well, I really am passionate about it. It's the one therapy that I am the most passionate about, and that I want to integrate it into everything. So I actually stepped out of my comfort zone because I was very happy where I was, and I'd been there for a long time. I'd been working in this service for 10 years almost. And I just didn't think I'd ever leave because I'd moved service and I lived close to where I was, and so on and so forth. And I thought, no, I'm going to have to move on. And so my drive was there, and I put myself in my threat mode, and I went for this job, and I got it. And I'm now working in a service where we are developing CFT groups. We are using CFT with everybody every day. We're using CFT with staff, with the immediate team. We have a weekly wellbeing meeting because the clinical lead, and there's a clinical lead and two therapists for the whole of Staffordshire for this service in sexual trauma. And the clinical lead was on the diploma, and myself and the other therapist we're all on the diploma. So all three of us are moving forwards with this brand new service that is being evaluated by NHS England moving forward, so that hopefully it will take off, and CFT is a big part of that.
Wow.
And yeah, so, and it's very exciting. And we're not only doing CFT with the clients and having CFT groups for the clients, a 28-week course, that we've all been on the CFT training from the Compassionate Mind Foundation with Kate Lucre as well, which was amazing. So we're developing these groups, but we're also developing it as a wider service to the whole of Staffordshire for their mental well-being. So reflective practice groups and consultation. So the reflective practice groups are working with people who have suffered a sexual trauma, and how it might impact them, and bringing them in and using CFT or compassionate mind training to help them through. So not just a small step. I stepped into a new arena where CFT is going to be a major part of every day, which is just passionately wonderful. It was just where I wanted to be. So it was meant to happen. And if I hadn't have done the diploma, this would never have happened.
That's extraordinary, Lorraine. And again, you see your enthusiasm and your courage and your drive bubbles through. I mean, thank you so much for sharing that story, and also the ways in which CFT now is flowing through different services and so forth. So that's brilliant. So don't want to take up too much of your time. Um, is there anything else that you would like to say and leave us with about your experience of the diploma?
Well, I just think that the whole journey was absolutely wonderful. And I totally understand now about the multiple minds and multiple emotions. And this picture behind me, I bought actually while I was doing the diploma, and you might not be able to see it very well, but it's a wire, it's a wire sculpture that's made by this famous sculptor. And it's a dandelion clock, and all the dandelions are kind of leaving the dandelion clock. So I'll perhaps bring it a bit closer so you might be able to see. There's lots and lots of little black dots at the top. And you can see I have my diploma certificate there too. But there's lots of little dandelion seeds at the top. And that to me is like opening out and finding those inner parts of you, and the multiple selves, the multiple emotions, and so on and so forth. It's kind of like letting it out and having a good look at it. There's many other metaphors and analogies that I use, and clients come up with themselves actually when they see that picture behind me when we're doing online work. But that was really powerful for me. And it is actually a fairy, which is a bit of a personal story here. When my when my children were really young, they were only 3 and 9. My husband sadly passed away very suddenly, and when my youngest daughter really got into fairy ornaments and so on and so forth, and she used to write letters to them and ask them
Oh,
questions, and I used to write back in this fancy handwriting, and then it started to take about 45 minutes a night to answer as she got older and she asked more questions. And so I thought, what am I going to do? So what I did was I didn't answer for a while, and she was like, "Mummy, where have the fairies gone? I don't know where they've gone." And I said, "Oh, I don't know. Maybe they're busy." So then I wrote this letter saying, "Sorry, we haven't answered for a while, but only our job is to go and try and help make the sad people feel a bit happier again and help them out when they've had disasters and terrible things happen to them. And we can't stop bad things from happening, but what we can do is go and try and ease their suffering." And she was like, "Wow, so sorry if we don't answer, it's because of that." And this went on for years. And I've written a book for her 21st birthday about it, actually. And but she used to say, "Mummy," when I trained as a therapist, "Mummy, you're a fairy now, aren't you? You're a fairy because you're helping to get all these emotions out with people." So that's what the fairy um,
what a lovely
analogy
story.
means. And now, strangely enough, my older daughter was interested in it too, but the younger one really became interested in all of this. And she's actually training to be a music therapist for patients
Wow.
with dementia. She's doing a master's in that. So it's a beautiful kind of like journey.
That's wow, wow. And yes, so you had an intuitive, we say intuitive wisdom about using compassionate imagery and compassionate dialogues. I mean, that's extraordinary. That's brilliant. Lorraine, look, you were a delight to work with. You were an inspiration. Your enthusiasm, your hard work, your insights, what you gave to the course was wonderful, and we wish you well. And we look forward to seeing you at subsequent events. And can I just thank you so much for giving of your time to talk to us about your experiences on the diploma.
Well, thank you. You're very, very welcome. And it's been an absolute honor. Thank you. Thank you, Paul.